New York was a city of dreams, where the lights never dimmed and the streets always buzzed with the pulse of ambition. Alex Donovan had seen it all: the towering skyscrapers, the power lunches, the endless meetings that spanned across time zones. As the CEO of Donovan Enterprises, one of the most successful financial firms in the world, Alex had everything a man could want, except for one thing: love. Despite his success, Alex often felt alone. The wealth, the status, the endless accolades, it all seemed shallow when he lay awake at night, wondering if he would ever find someone who saw beyond his accomplishments, someone who would love him for who he truly was. He had spent years building his empire, but love was something he hadn't allowed himself to pursue. After all, who would love a man like him? Someone constantly pulled between family expectations, corporate demands, and a life that didn't leave room for anything else. The idea of love seemed like a luxury he couldn't afford. It was at one of these grand events, a gala hosted by a prominent investor, where Alex first saw her Isabella Collins. Isabella hadn't planned to attend the gala. She wasn't part of the high society crowd. In fact, she was the complete opposite. Coming from a humble background, she had worked hard to make a life for herself in New York, juggling her job at a small cafe with a handful of freelance design projects. She wasn't interested in the fancy world of billionaires and elite parties, but her best friend had insisted she join, promising it would be a night to remember. As she stepped into the grand ballroom, she felt a little out of place. The room was filled with impeccably dressed men and women, laughing and talking, their conversations revolving around business deals and the latest trends. Isabella couldn't help but feel like she was on the outside looking in. But as she made her way toward the drinks table, she caught sight of him. Alex Donovan was standing near the far wall, engaged in conversation with a group of businessmen. He exuded an effortless confidence, his sharp suit and composed demeanor making him the center of attention without trying. But it wasn't just his appearance that drew her. In it was something about the way he carried himself. There was a subtle sadness in his eyes, a hint of loneliness behind the mask of success. She didn't know why, but something compelled her to watch him. She quickly looked away when their eyes met, her heart skipping a beat. It was a brief exchange, a fleeting moment, but it lingered in her mind long after. Hours passed, and Isabella had almost forgotten about the brief glance they'd shared when she found herself at the coffee station, trying to avoid the group of over-enthusiastic businessmen who had been eyeing her all night. Just as she was about to leave, she felt a tap on her shoulder. Turning around, she came face to face with Alex Donovan. "Mind if I join you?" he asked, his voice smooth and low, yet with a hint of curiosity. Isabella's heart raced. She hadn't expected him to approach her, and for a moment she didn't know what to say. "Of course," she said, trying to remain composed. They both grabbed a drink and stood there in an awkward silence for a moment, before Alex broke the ice. "I don't mean to intrude, but I couldn't help but notice you earlier. You seem out of place in this crowd." Isabella smiled softly, a little taken aback. "I guess you could say I'm not really part of the whole ... scene." She gestured vaguely to the glamorous surroundings. "But I'm here for a friend." Alex chuckled, the tension easing. "I get it. I'm not much of a fan of these things either. Sometimes I feel like I'm just here because it's expected of me." They stood in comfortable silence for a few moments, sipping their drinks. Isabella noticed how different Alex seemed up close. His sharp features softened, and the serious expression on his face faded, revealing someone who seemed ... human. "Do you ever wonder if all of this is worth it?" she asked suddenly, surprising even herself. "The parties, the business, the constant need to prove something. Is it really fulfilling?" Alex's eyes softened, and for the first time that night, a small, genuine smile appeared on his face. "Honestly, I don't know anymore. It's all I've ever known, but sometimes it feels ... empty." Isabella nodded in understanding. "I get that. I've spent most of my life just trying to make ends meet. And while I'm grateful for everything I've built, sometimes I wonder if there's more to life than just surviving." Their conversation drifted toward more personal topics, from childhood dreams to their favorite places in the city. The more they talked, the more Alex felt like he was letting go of the walls he had spent years building around himself. And for Isabella, talking to someone who truly listened felt like a breath of fresh air. There was something about him, something real that made her feel understood in a way she hadn't felt before. As the evening wound down, Alex looked at Isabella with a mixture of admiration and curiosity. He hadn't expected to connect with her so easily, but now that they had, he didn't want the night to end. "I should go," Isabella said softly, glancing at her phone. "It's getting late, and I have work early tomorrow." Alex nodded, reluctantly. "I understand. I had a great time tonight. Would you like to meet again sometime?" Isabella hesitated for a moment, her heart beating faster. She wasn't used to this being asked out by someone like Alex Donovan, but there was something about him that made her feel safe, something that drew her in. "I'd like that," she said, a smile tugging at her lips. The next few weeks flew by as Alex and Isabella continued to see each other. They spent time at coffee shops, parks, and even quiet diners where they could talk for hours without the world interrupting them. They shared stories of their pasts, how Alex's childhood had been shaped by pressure and expectations, and how Isabella had fought to build a life for herself. Through it all, they began to realize that their differences weren't barriers, they were what made their connection so unique. But as their bond deepened, reality began to set in. Alex's family, who had always expected him to marry someone of the same social standing, began to express their concerns. Isabella, too, felt the pressure of her own family's expectations, who saw Alex as someone out of her league. The two of them knew that their love was real, but they also knew the weight of their family's expectations. Neither one was sure they could overcome the societal barriers that separated them. And as the pressure mounted, both Alex and Isabella had to make a choice, one that would ultimately lead them to an impossible decision. The days that followed were filled with an undercurrent of unease. While Alex and Isabella had found something genuine in each other, the world around them seemed determined to pull them apart. They continued to meet in secret, their love growing deeper with each passing day. But both of them knew that the fairy tale they had started was bound to collide with reality. Alex was used to power. He controlled boardrooms, negotiated multi-million-dollar deals, and lived a life of luxury. But the one thing he couldn't control was his family's expectations. Every conversation with his parents felt like a ticking time bomb, with his mother constantly hinting at the need for him to settle down with someone of his own social stature, someone who could stand beside him in the public eye and help him expand his family's legacy. Alex had always believed that he was in control of his own destiny. But now, as he spent more time with Isabella, he realized just how much his family's influence loomed over his life. He could feel the pressure building. The weight of their legacy was heavy on his shoulders. One evening, as Alex sat at his father's dinner table, his mind wandered. His father, A man in his mid-60s, with a hard edge, was speaking about the company's latest acquisitions. As usual, his father's voice was filled with authority, each word reinforcing the expectations that Alex had lived under all his life. "Alex," his father said, looking over at him with piercing eyes, "we've been speaking with the Lockwoods. Their daughter Madeline would be a perfect match for you. You'll meet her at the gala next week." Alex's stomach sank. Madeline Lockwood was everything his family wanted for him, beautiful, poised, and from an old money family. But Alex didn't want to be with her. His mind was filled with thoughts of Isabella, her warm smile, her honesty, and the way she made him feel alive in ways that the high society women his family approved of never could. "Dad, I don't," Alex began to say, but his father cut him off, his voice colder this time. "You don't have to say anything." "Son," his father said, a hint of frustration creeping into his tone, "it's time to focus on the future, not these ... distractions." Alex felt the walls close in around him. His father was right, he had been distracted, but not by someone like Madeline. He was distracted by someone who didn't fit their world, someone who wasn't part of their plans. Meanwhile, Isabella was grappling with her own set of expectations. While her family didn't pressure her as aggressively as Alex's, they still had high hopes for her. After all, she had fought tooth and nail to make it in New York. And now that she had found a man like Alex, they were eager to see her succeed in securing a future that matched her new reality. Her mother had never hidden the fact that she saw Isabella's career in the arts as a temporary phase. She wanted her daughter to marry someone wealthy, someone who could offer stability, and Isabella knew that Alex was the type of man her mother had always hoped for her to find. But even as her mother encouraged her to pursue a relationship with him, Isabella couldn't help but feel uneasy. She loved Alex, but could she really belong to his world? One afternoon, as Isabella sat in her mother's living room, sipping tea, the conversation turned to Alex. "He's a good catch, Isabella," her mother said, her eyes gleaming with pride. "He's from the Donovan family, one of the most powerful families in this city. This is your chance." Isabella felt a knot form in her stomach. "But what about us? What about what I want?" Her mother raised an eyebrow, almost as if she hadn't heard her. "What you want is irrelevant, darling. You've spent too many years trying to make it on your own. Don't throw that all away for a silly little romance." Isabella felt the weight of her mother's words, but they were not the words that stuck with her the most. It was the look in her mother's eyes, expectant, demanding, that made her feel trapped. The pressure continued to mount for both Alex and Isabella. As the gala approached, where both of their families would expect them to play their respective roles, the reality of their situation became too much to ignore. On the night of the gala, both Alex and Isabella felt the heavy weight of the choices they were about to make. For Isabella, it was about more than just the choice between Alex and the life her family had mapped out for her. It was about reconciling her own dreams with her love for him. For Alex, it was about defying everything he had been raised to believe in, and choosing a life that was his one, that didn't depend on the expectations of his family. As the gala went into full swing, Isabella stood in the crowd, dressed in a gown that glimmered under the chandelier. Her eyes kept scanning the room, looking for Alex. She knew she couldn't continue pretending to be someone she wasn't. She had to face the truth: she loved him. And no matter what her family thought, that was all that mattered. Finally, she saw him across the room, standing next to his family, dressed in a perfectly tailored suit. The tension in his posture was unmistakable. She could see the war within him, the conflict between the world he had been born into and the love they had found. Isabella walked toward him, her heart pounding with both fear and hope. But as she approached, Alex turned to greet her, and his face was not one of excitement, it was of resignation. "I'm sorry," Alex said, his voice barely above a whisper, his eyes sad. "I can't do this. I can't go against my family like this. They've worked too hard for me to throw it all away." Isabella's heart shattered in that moment. She had known it was coming, but the reality of hearing him say it out loud felt like a dagger. "Alex, ... You can't just let them decide for you," she said, her voice shaking with emotion. "I'm not asking you to choose between me and them. I'm asking you to choose yourself." But Alex's gaze dropped. "I don't know how," he said, his voice heavy with regret. "I've never been able to choose anything for myself. I'm sorry, Isabella. I can't change who I am." The days following the gala were painful. They both went their separate ways, trapped by the weight of expectations and the choices they hadn't had the courage to make. Alex threw himself into his work, his heart heavy with regret. He had let the pressure of his family's expectations dictate his future. And now he was alone, with nothing to show for the love he had lost. Isabella, too, felt the sting of their separation. She had loved him with all her heart, but in the end, their love wasn't enough to overcome the differences in their worlds. She had hoped he would fight for her, but now she realized that she was the only one who truly believed in their love. The days that followed their separation were filled with a quiet kind of pain. Alex found himself consumed by his work, just as he had in the past, but it no longer brought him the satisfaction it once had. The towering buildings, the endless meetings, the company that had once been the focus of his life, none of it seemed important now. His mind kept drifting back to Isabella, to the moments they had shared, to the future they could have had together. But it was all gone now. She was gone. Isabella, too, struggled to move on. She had convinced herself that walking away from Alex was the right choice, that love alone wasn't enough to overcome the differences in their worlds. But every time she closed her eyes, she saw his face the way his eyes had softened when he looked at her, the warmth of his smile. It hurt more than she cared to admit, and the weight of regret began to settle heavily in her chest. She threw herself into her work, hoping that the busy days would numb the pain. She spent hours designing, meeting clients, and filling her time with distractions. But no matter how hard she tried, the emptiness lingered. She missed him more than she ever thought she could. One evening, as she sat alone in her apartment, the weight of the silence around her felt suffocating. Her phone buzzed with a text, and for a moment, she hoped it was Alex. But it wasn't. It was her mother. "Mum, Isabella, have you heard about Alex's engagement?" Isabella froze, the text burning into her screen. Engagement? The words seemed surreal, but as she reread the message, she realized the truth. Alex had moved on, just as she had feared. He had chosen his family's expectations over their love. He had chosen Madeline Lockwood, the woman his family had always hoped for him to marry. The woman who was the perfect match in every way except for one. She wasn't Isabella. A wave of bitterness and heartache washed over her. She had told herself that she had made the right choice. But now, seeing Alex with someone else, it felt like she had been betrayed. Alex sat in his office late that night, staring at the city lights outside his window. The decision to let Isabella go had torn him apart, but he had convinced himself it was the right thing to do. Family came first, or so he had been taught. He had always followed his parents' wishes, always put the business before his own happiness. But the truth was, it hadn't worked. He hadn't been happy. He hadn't felt whole since he walked away from her. Alex had tried to make things work with Madeline, but every time he looked at her, he saw Isabella's face. He saw her smile, her eyes, and the way she had looked at him as though he was more than just a title or a name. He had never felt that with anyone else. And now, the thought of spending his life with someone who didn't truly know him felt hollow. The phone buzzed on his desk, pulling him out of his thoughts. It was a message from his mother. "Mum, Madeline called. She's been talking about the wedding plans. We need to start preparing." Alex stared at the text for a long moment, feeling a tightening in his chest. His mother's words were like a chain around his heart, dragging him back to a life he no longer wanted. But what choice did he have? He had made his bed, and now he had to lie in it. A few weeks later, fate intervened. Alex was walking through Central Park, lost in his thoughts, when he saw her. Isabella was sitting on a bench, reading a book, looking as beautiful and serene as he remembered. She looked up and caught his gaze, and for a brief moment, time seemed to stand still. Neither of them spoke, but the silence between them was filled with so much unspoken emotion. "Isabella," Alex said, his voice breaking the silence. "I didn't expect to see you here." Isabella closed the book in her hands and stood up, taking a small step toward him. Her heart raced as she tried to mask the pain she felt seeing him again. "I didn't expect to see you either," she said, her voice calm but laced with hurt. Alex wanted to reach out to her, to tell her that he had made a mistake, that he regretted every moment since they had parted ways. But the words wouldn't come. He had lost her, and now all he had were regrets. "I heard about your engagement," Isabella said quietly, her gaze steady. "I didn't think it would hurt this much, but it does." Alex winced at the words, feeling the weight of them like a physical blow. "Isabella, I never wanted to hurt you, but I couldn't. I couldn't choose you. I couldn't let my family down. And now?" Isabella asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "Now that it's too late. Are you happy?" Alex hesitated. He wasn't happy. He had never been more miserable. "No, I'm not happy," he admitted, his voice raw with emotion. "I was wrong. I was a fool. And now, I can't undo it. I've ruined everything." Isabella closed her eyes for a moment, a tear slipping down her cheek. "I don't know if I can forgive you, Alex," she said softly. "I loved you, and you broke my heart." The words hung in the air, heavier than anything they had said before. Alex took a step closer, but Isabella shook her head. "No," she said, wiping her tears away. "We can't go back. We can't fix this. We've both chosen our paths, and now we have to live with the consequences." They stood there, facing each other, the world around them moving on as if nothing had changed. And yet, everything had changed. For Alex and Isabella, the love they had shared was no longer enough to overcome the forces that had torn them apart. The silence between them felt final, like an ending they both knew had to come. "I'll always love you," Alex said, his voice barely above a whisper. Isabella gave him a small, sad smile. "I'll always remember you, Alex, but we have to let go. We have to move on." With those words, she turned and walked away, leaving Alex standing in the park, staring after her. And as he watched her disappear into the crowd, Alex realized the truth sometimes. Love wasn't enough. Sometimes The choices we make, the paths we take, are irreversible. The weeks after their encounter in Central Park passed slowly for both Alex and Isabella. The city around them buzzed with life, yet inside, they both felt as though they were walking through their days in a fog. For Alex, the silence between him and Isabella weighed on him more than he cared to admit. Every conversation he had with his parents, every meeting at the office, felt meaningless. The only thought that consumed him was Isabella, the woman he had loved, the woman he had lost. He tried to keep busy, but nothing could shake the feeling that something was missing. The engagement to Madeline felt like a hollow attempt to fill the void left by Isabella's absence. Madeline was everything his family wanted for him, poised, elegant, and from the right family. But as he spent more time with her, he couldn't help but feel that he was suffocating. She was not Isabella. She wasn't the woman who had challenged him, who had made him feel seen for who he truly was. Isabella, too, felt the weight of their separation. She had tried to convince herself that moving on was the right thing to do. She had focused on her work, buried herself in her freelance projects, and spent time with her friends. But every time she saw a couple in love or heard a love song on the radio, her thoughts inevitably drifted back to Alex. She had loved him with all her heart, and now she was faced with the painful reality that love was not always enough. The life they had dreamed of together seemed like a distant memory, something that could never be. Her mother continued to push her toward stability, reminding her that Alex was not the right choice for her. You deserve someone who can give you security, someone who can offer you the life you've always dreamed of, her mother would say. But as Isabella looked at the life she had built, she realized that her dreams had changed. She no longer wanted a life dictated by others' expectations. She wanted to build something real, something that came from the heart. It was a rainy Tuesday afternoon when Alex found himself at the office, staring out the window. His thoughts were a million miles away, his mind replaying his last conversation with Isabella. It had been a week since they had spoken, and he couldn't shake the feeling that he had made the wrong decision, that he had let her slip away without truly fighting for her. His phone buzzed, pulling him out of his thoughts. It was a text from his mother. "Mum, I've spoken with Madeline's family. The wedding is set for next month. I hope you're ready to make this official." The words felt like a punch to his gut. Madeline had always been the safe choice, the right choice in his family's eyes. But for Alex, the thought of marrying her felt like a betrayal of everything he had truly wanted. He had never loved her the way he loved Isabella, and the realization hit him like a wave as he sat there, torn between the life his family wanted for him and the life he wanted to create with Isabella. His phone rang again. This time, it was Isabella. Alex's heart raced as he answered the phone. "Isabella," he said, his voice tinged with surprise and hope. "I need to see you." Isabella's voice came through the line, soft but urgent. Alex didn't hesitate. "I'll be there in an hour." The moment he hung up, he grabbed his coat and rushed out of his office. His heart beat faster with every step he took. He didn't know what Isabella wanted to say, but he knew one thing: he couldn't let her go without a fight. When Alex arrived at her apartment, Isabella was waiting for him in the doorway. Her eyes were red, as though she had been crying, but there was something different about her, a look of resolve. "Isabella," Alex said softly, his voice filled with emotion. "I thought I had lost you." Isabella stepped aside to let him in. "You haven't lost me yet, Alex, but I can't keep doing this. I can't keep living in the shadow of what should have been." Alex walked toward her, his heart aching. "I've made so many mistakes. I've let you go when I should have fought for us. But I'm here now. I'm not walking away. I don't want to marry Madeline. I don't want that life. I want this, I want you. Isabella's eyes softened, but she shook her head. I don't know if it's too late, Alex. We've both made decisions that we can't take back, and I can't be the person who holds you back from your family, from your future. Alex reached for her hand, holding it tightly. I've been living for everyone else's expectations my whole life, but I can't do that anymore. I can't live a life that isn't mine. I want to be with you. I want to make it right. Isabella looked into his eyes, and for the first time in a long time, she saw the sincerity and vulnerability that had always been there. Alex, she whispered, her voice trembling, I've never stopped loving you, but we both need to make a choice. We need to choose each other, fully. Without looking back, it wasn't an easy decision. They both knew that choosing each other meant defying the expectations that had been placed on them by their families and society. But in that moment, they both realized that their love was worth the risk. Alex leaned in and kissed her gently, the kiss full of regret, longing, and hope. I'm ready, he said, his voice thick with emotion. I'm ready to fight for us. For the life we deserve. Isabella smiled through her tears. Then let's fight together. The weeks following their decision to fight for each other were filled with both hope and tension. Alex and Isabella were finally on the same page, determined to build a life together. But the reality of their choices quickly caught up with them. Their love was genuine, but the world around them was not so forgiving. Alex's decision to distance himself from the family expectations had not come without consequences. His parents, particularly his father, were furious. They had always viewed Alex as the heir to the family legacy, the one who would carry the torch for generations to come. But now, his choice to turn away from Madeline and pursue a relationship with Isabella had shaken everything. One evening, Alex sat at dinner with his parents, the tension thick in the air. His father, as usual, was the first to speak. You've made a grave mistake, Alex, his father said, his voice stern. This isn't just about you. You've embarrassed this family. Do you understand the weight of your actions? Alex looked across the table at his father, the man he had tried so hard to please for so many years. But now, all he could feel was resentment. He didn't want this life, not if it meant sacrificing his happiness. I understand the weight of my actions, but I can't live my life for you anymore, Alex replied, his voice steady but filled with defiance. I love Isabella, and that's all that matters now. His mother's face softened slightly, but she still looked disappointed. You're throwing everything away. The future we've planned for you. ... I'm choosing a different future. Alex interrupted, his gaze unwavering. A future where I get to choose who I love. Meanwhile, Isabella was facing her own battles. Her family, while not as controlling as Alex's, still had expectations. They had always supported her ambitions, but now, with her relationship with Alex becoming public, the dynamics were changing. Her mother, especially, had always dreamed of her daughter marrying into wealth and power. She had always pushed Isabella toward successful, well-established men who could provide a life of stability and security. And Alex, with his wealth and power, was everything her mother had ever wanted. But Isabella knew better. She didn't want a life of luxury if it meant being in a relationship based on social expectations. One evening, while they were having dinner at her parents' house, her mother broached the subject once again. "You're still seeing Alex, aren't you?" her mother asked, her voice soft but probing. Isabella took a deep breath, trying to keep her emotions in check. "Yes, Mom, we're together." Her mother's gaze softened, but there was a hint of concern in her eyes. "He's from a different world, Isabella. Don't you see that? You have a bright future ahead of you, and I just don't want you to make the same mistakes I did." Isabella put her fork down and looked her mother in the eye. "I know you want the best for me, Mum, but I'm not marrying someone for their money. I'm with Alex because I love him. That's all that matters." Her mother sighed, looking at her with a mixture of worry and affection. "I just don't want you to end up hurt." "I won't, Mom," Isabella said firmly. "I've made my choice." As time went on, the pressure from their families started to take a toll on their relationship. Alex found himself caught in a constant tug-of-war between the woman he loved and the family he had always tried to please. He began to pull away from Isabella, not because he didn't love her, but because the weight of his responsibilities was beginning to suffocate him. Isabella, too, felt the strain. She knew Alex was struggling with the expectations of his family, but she couldn't help but feel that he was slipping away from her. There were nights when he came home late, barely speaking to her, his mind occupied with business. There were moments when they would sit in silence, both of them lost in their own thoughts, neither of them able to reach the other. One evening, after a particularly tense week, Isabella sat across from Alex at the dinner table, the distance between them palpable. She looked at him, her heart heavy with both love and frustration. "Alex," she said quietly, her voice breaking the silence, "we can't keep doing this. We can't keep letting everything and everyone get in the way of us. You're letting your family tear us apart, and I don't know how much longer I can stand it." Alex looked up at her, his expression filled with guilt. "I don't want to hurt you, Isabella, but it's not that simple. You don't understand the pressure I'm under. I've worked my whole life to get here, and now everything feels like it's falling apart." "I understand more than you think," Isabella replied, her voice steady. "I love you, Alex, but I can't keep waiting for you to choose me. I need to know that you're here, that you're present in this relationship, not just physically, but emotionally." Alex stood up, running a hand through his hair in frustration. "I don't know what you want from me, Isabella. I'm trying to find a way to balance everything, but I can't keep doing this. I can't keep fighting against my family and my future." Isabella stood up as well, her voice rising. "I'm not asking you to fight against your family, Alex. I'm asking you to fight for us." There was a long silence between them, filled with tension and unspoken fears. Alex knew she was right. He had been holding back, letting fear and obligation guide his decisions. But now, looking at Isabella, her eyes filled with love and pain, he realized that he couldn't keep making excuses. The next day, Alex made a decision that would change everything. He went to his family and told them the truth. He couldn't live the life they had mapped out for him. He couldn't marry someone he didn't love. He couldn't keep running away from what his heart truly wanted. It was a painful conversation, but Alex stood firm. His father was furious, and his mother was heartbroken, but Alex knew that this was the only way he could truly be free. Free to love Isabella. Free to live a life on his own terms. He rushed to Isabella's apartment, his heart pounding in his chest. When she opened the door, he didn't say a word, he simply pulled her into his arms. "I choose you," Alex whispered. "I'm done letting anyone else decide for me." I'm ready to build a life with you." Isabella's heart raced as she looked up at him, seeing the sincerity in his eyes. "Are you sure?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "I've never been more sure of anything in my life," Alex replied. After Alex's bold decision to stand up to his family, a sense of relief washed over him. For the first time in his life, he felt as though he was finally taking control of his own destiny. The weight of expectations had been lifted, but the road ahead was still uncertain. His family was not going to let him walk away from their legacy without a fight. But for the first time in a long time, Alex didn't care. Isabella, too, felt a shift within herself. She had always supported Alex, but now she saw a new side to him, a side that was willing to sacrifice everything for their love. Her heart swelled with pride, but there was also a sense of fear. The future was still unclear. Their love was strong, but it wasn't enough to erase the years of pressure and doubt that had built up around them. The next few weeks were filled with new beginnings. Alex moved out of the family mansion and into a small apartment in the city, a place that was entirely his, not defined by his family's wealth or legacy. He and Isabella spent time together, creating a life for themselves outside the shadow of their families. They took long walks, cooked meals together, and laughed in ways they hadn't done in a long time. But even in their small moments of happiness, the pressure of their decisions lingered. Isabella's family didn't understand why she was with Alex. They couldn't see past his wealth and his family's name. They still saw him as someone who had everything, someone who could easily move on if things didn't work out with her. It was a constant reminder of the challenges they faced, how their love was not enough for everyone. Alex, too, found himself questioning whether he had made the right decision. There were days when the loneliness of standing against his family's expectations felt unbearable. He had always been the one in control, the one who made the decisions. But now he was faced with the reality of choosing love over legacy. And though he loved Isabella more than anything, he couldn't help but wonder, was it worth it? As they settled into their new life, things started to feel normal again till a letter arrived. It was from Alex's father. Alex had been avoiding his family's calls for weeks. But he knew this letter was serious. He opened it, his hands shaking as he read the contents. His father had made one last attempt to convince him to come back, to take his place in the family business. But this time it was different. His father threatened to cut him off completely, to sever all ties if he didn't return to the family fold. The letter was both a plea and a warning. Come back or lose everything. Alex couldn't ignore the letter, and he knew he had to face his father. So, one evening, he made his way to the family estate, his heart heavy with the knowledge that this meeting could change everything. Isabella had offered to come with him, but Alex had insisted that this was something he had to do alone. As he entered the grand house, the familiar weight of his family's expectations settled over him like a heavy cloak. His father was sitting at the head of the long dining table, his expression unreadable. "Alex," his father said coldly, "I see you've made your choice, but I want you to understand something. You can't just throw away everything we've built. The Donovan name means something. You can't just walk away from that." Alex stood tall, his voice steady but filled with emotion. "I'm not throwing anything away, Dad. I'm choosing a different life. One that's mine." His father's eyes narrowed. "You'll regret this. You can't leave behind everything we've worked for. And what about Isabella? She's not even from a family like ours. What will you do when the money runs out? When the pressure gets too much?" Alex's fists clenched, but he refused to back down. I don't care about the money. I don't care about legacy or family business anymore. I care about Isabella. She's the only thing that matters. His father's face twisted with disdain. You're a fool. And if you continue down this path, you'll be alone. Later that night, Alex returned to his apartment, exhausted and drained. He sat on the couch, trying to make sense of what had just happened. His father's words echoed in his mind, and for a moment he questioned whether he was doing the right thing. Was he truly ready to give up everything for Isabella? Isabella walked into the room, her expression soft. She had been waiting for him to come back, knowing that he would need her more than ever. How did it go? She asked gently, sitting next to him. Alex looked at her, his eyes filled with both regret and resolve. He wants me to come back. He said I'd regret it, that I can't abandon everything. Isabella reached for his hand, holding it tightly. Alex, you've made your decision. I know it's hard, but you don't have to do it alone. You don't have to go back to them. We can build a life together, even if it's not the life your father envisioned. Alex smiled, a bittersweet smile. I don't want to go back to them, but it's hard to turn my back on everything I've known. Isabella leaned in, her voice soft but firm. You don't have to turn your back on everything. You're choosing a life with me, and that's enough. In the days that followed, Alex came to a realization. He could keep living for his family's approval, keep trying to please everyone, or he could live for himself and the woman he loved. The decision was clear now, and for the first time in his life, Alex knew what it meant to truly be free. He called his father, his voice steady as he spoke the words that would change everything. I'm not coming back. I'm choosing my own path. And with that, Alex Donovan chose to live a life that wasn't dictated by family expectations. He chose Isabella, and for the first time, he felt whole. The days following Alex's decision to stand up to his family were filled with a mixture of relief and uncertainty. He had chosen Isabella, but that choice had not come without consequences. The Donovan family had always expected him to follow a certain path, one that led to greater power, wealth, and influence. But now that Alex had defied their expectations, the road ahead was full of challenges. Isabella had always known that being with Alex meant facing obstacles. But now that Alex had made his decision, Isabella found herself questioning whether she was truly prepared for the consequences. She had always dreamed of a life with Alex, one where they could live freely, without the pressure of society's expectations. But now, as Alex began to face the fallout from his family's anger, Isabella couldn't help but feel guilty. Was she the one who had caused him to make such a drastic decision? Was their love worth the sacrifice? One evening, after a quiet dinner together, Isabella sat beside Alex on the couch. He was still adjusting to life without his family's support, and she could see the toll it was taking on him. He wasn't the same confident, charismatic man he had once been. There were days when he seemed distant, weighed down by the burden of the decision he had made. Alex, Isabella said softly, her voice laced with concern. Are you sure about this? I know you've made your decision, but I can see how much it's hurting you. Are we sure this is the life you want? Because I don't want you to regret it later. Alex turned to her, his eyes filled with gratitude, but also with exhaustion. He took her hand in his fingers gently brushing hers. I've never been more sure of anything in my life. Yes, it's hard. Yes, my family is angry. But Isabella, I would rather be with you and struggle than live a life without love. I've spent too much of my life doing things for other people, trying to live up to expectations that weren't my own. You are the only thing that feels real to me now." Isabella's heart swelled with love for him, but there was still a nagging fear in the back of her mind. She had always known that being with Alex wouldn't be easy, but she hadn't anticipated how difficult it would be for him to let go of everything he had built. She wanted to be his rock, but she also needed him to be strong for both of them. As Alex and Isabella continued to navigate their new life together, they found themselves facing unexpected challenges. It wasn't just Alex's family that posed a threat, was the people in their lives who couldn't understand their choices. One afternoon, Alex was meeting with one of his old colleagues, David Carter, a man who had been with him since the early days of Donovan Enterprises. David was a loyal employee, but his words held a subtle undertone of criticism. "So, Alex," David began, leaning back in his chair, "I hear you've left the family business. Is that really what you want? The Donovans built something powerful, something that could change the world. Are you really going to throw that away for a relationship?" Alex's jaw tightened, but he remained calm. "I'm not throwing anything away, David. I'm just choosing a different path." David raised an eyebrow. "A path that doesn't include the family, doesn't include everything you've worked for." "Everything I've worked for," Alex repeated, his voice growing colder. "It's not about that. It's about what makes me happy. And right now, that's being with Isabella. I'm not going to apologize for that." David didn't press further, but Alex could see the judgment in his eyes. The truth was, Alex had always been surrounded by people who saw him as a means to an end, whether it was in business, family, or even friendships. And now, as he took this step toward a different life, he realized how few people truly understood him. But none of that mattered. All that mattered was Isabella. Despite the growing tensions with their families and the world around them, Isabella began to feel more confident in her decision. She had always been afraid of judgment, but now she started to see her relationship with Alex in a different light. She had chosen him not because of his wealth or status, but because of the man he was, because of the love they shared. One afternoon, as they walked through the park, hand in hand, Isabella felt the weight of the world finally lift from her shoulders. She had spent so long trying to live up to her family's expectations, trying to meet the standards set by society. But now she was free, and it was a freedom that she had never known before. "I think I finally understand," Isabella said, stopping to look at Alex. "All this time I've been trying to fit into a mold that wasn't mine. I was afraid of losing my family's approval, afraid of what people would think. But being with you has shown me what really matters, what truly makes me happy." Alex smiled, his eyes shining with affection. "I know it's not easy, but I'm proud of you. You've always been strong, Isabella, and you don't need anyone's approval but your own." They continued their walk, feeling the strength of their bond growing with each step. They were no longer living in the shadows of family expectations or societal pressures. They were finally living for themselves. As Alex and Isabella settled into their new life, they knew there would still be challenges. Their families wouldn't easily accept their choices, and the road ahead was uncertain. But for the first time, they were ready to face it together, without fear, without regret. Alex looked at Isabella one evening, his heart full. "I know we have a long way to go, but I'm ready for it. I'm ready to build a life with you, one that's ours, and no one else's." Isabella smiled, a sense of peace settling over her. "So am I. We've come this far, and we'll keep going, together." The months that followed Alex and Isabella's decision to live their lives on their own terms were filled with small victories and challenges. While they were building a future together, their love was continually tested, not just by their families, but by the reality of what it meant to truly defy everything they had once known. But even in the face of adversity, they were determined to make it work. Alex had quit the family business, opting to start his own venture, one that reflected his own values rather than the legacy his father had built. Isabella, too, had grown stronger in her own career, taking on bigger design projects and slowly finding her own voice in the world of art and design. Still, life was never simple, and the world they had chosen was far from easy. Just when Alex and Isabella thought they had begun to find peace, Madeline Lockwood reappeared in their lives. It was unexpected. Madeline, the woman Alex had once been expected to marry, was back in New York after spending several months abroad. And this time, she was determined to get Alex back. It started with a casual dinner invitation, a simple gesture from the past. Madeline had invited Alex to a gala, a major event in the city, under the guise of old friendships. She knew he was no longer part of her world, but she still felt that there was something unfinished between them. What Madeline didn't know was that this wasn't just a dinner invitation, it was her attempt to break apart the life that Alex had so carefully rebuilt. The night of the gala, Alex was torn. He knew he was committed to Isabella, but part of him felt a pull to the past. Madeline was still an influential figure in his life, someone who had been in his world for years, someone his parents had always envisioned him marrying. Isabella could see the tension in his eyes when he received the invitation. She had known that this moment would come sooner or later, and deep down she was afraid that Alex might slip back into the life that he had worked so hard to leave behind. "I don't want to be the one who holds you back, Alex," Isabella said, her voice soft but filled with vulnerability. "I know how important this is to you, but I need you to make a choice. You can't keep living in the past and the future at the same time. If you're with me, you need to choose me now." Alex looked at her, feeling his heart ache. "Isabella, I'm not going to walk away from us. I've made my choice." But there was a hesitation in his voice. He didn't want to hurt Isabella. He didn't want to go to the gala, but the pressure from his past was something he couldn't entirely shake off. Despite his words, Alex went to the gala. When he entered the grand hall, the familiar sense of obligation washed over him. The luxury, the expectation, it was all the same as it had been before. Madeline was waiting for him, her smile wide as she approached him. "Alex, I've missed you," she said, her voice sweet, but there was a certain edge to it. "I heard you were done with the family business." "I'm sorry to hear that." Alex shifted uncomfortably. "I've made my decision. I'm not going back, Madeline. I'm not the same person I was when we were together." Madeline's eyes flickered with a mixture of annoyance and understanding. "You're still so naive, Alex. You think this life you've chosen will fulfill you. The world is built on power, on wealth. Don't you miss that?" Before Alex could respond, Isabella's face flashed in his mind. The love, the quiet moments, the peace they had found together. And in that instant, he knew that no matter what Madeline said, he had already made his choice. "I've made my choice, Madeline," Alex said firmly, "and it's not with you." Madeline's expression faltered, but she quickly regained her composure. "You'll regret this, Alex, but if you really think you're happy with her," she spat the word out with venom, "then so be it." After the gala, Alex returned home, his mind swirling with doubt and confusion. He had chosen Isabella, but why did the past still haunt him? Was it because of what he had left behind, or was it because he had not been fully honest with himself? When Isabella saw him, she didn't need to ask what had happened. The look in his eyes told her everything. She had seen the way Madeline had looked at him, the way the world of wealth and influence had called him back. Even if just for a moment. Alex walked over to Isabella, his face filled with regret. "I'm sorry, I should have never gone. I should have trusted you more." Isabella stood silently for a moment before speaking. "You don't need to apologize, Alex. I know it's hard, but we can't keep living in a world where you have one foot in the past and one in the future." Alex's heart broke at her words. He had already made the decision to be with her, but the road ahead wasn't going to be easy. He couldn't keep straddling both worlds. "I want to choose you," Alex said, his voice thick with emotion. "I've never been more sure of anything in my life, but I need you to trust me." Isabella looked at him, her heart torn between her love for him and her fear of being hurt again. "You need to trust yourself first, Alex. You need to decide that you don't want that life anymore, no matter how hard it is." The conversation was difficult, and the emotional weight was heavy. But as they sat together in the quiet of their apartment, Alex and Isabella both realized something important. They had chosen each other, but it was up to them to build the life they wanted, free from the pressures of their pasts. "I love you, Isabella," Alex whispered, his hand gently brushing her cheek. "And I want to prove it to you every day." Isabella smiled softly, her heart filling with love for him. "We'll make it work, Alex. We've already come so far." And in that moment, they both knew that despite the challenges ahead, they were stronger together. The future was still uncertain, but as long as they faced it side by side, there was nothing they couldn't overcome. After the emotional whirlwind of the gala and the confrontation with Madeline, Alex and Isabella knew that they had to make a final decision. The world they had once known, the world of high society, family expectations, and inherited legacies, was pulling at them from all sides. But now, more than ever, they knew what they wanted. Or so they thought. The weeks following the gala were filled with doubt and soul-searching. Though Alex had made his decision, the scars of the past were not easily erased. Every time he sat down for a business meeting, every time he thought about his family, he felt the weight of the world on his shoulders. The fear of losing everything he had built, of abandoning the legacy his family had worked so hard for, haunted him. But the thought of being with Isabella, of building a life with her, kept him grounded. Isabella, too, was struggling. She had always known that her love for Alex came with a price. But she couldn't ignore the nagging feeling that she was being pulled into a life that was not hers. She had built her own identity, her own future, and she had worked so hard to get to where she was. Was she willing to give up everything for a life with Alex? Was she ready to sacrifice her independence for love? One evening, as they sat together in their apartment, the tension between them grew. They hadn't spoken about the future in weeks, and the silence between them was becoming unbearable. "Alex," Isabella began, her voice steady but filled with emotion, "we can't keep living like this. I know you love me, and I love you, but we're both living in fear. Fear of what we might lose, fear of what we might gain. This isn't how love should be." Alex turned to her, his heart heavy. "I know, Isabella. I've been so afraid. Afraid of losing everything, afraid of disappointing everyone. But every day that I spend with you, I realize more and more that I don't want to live for anyone but you." I don't want to live in fear anymore. Isabella's eyes softened, but there was a sadness there too. But can we really make it work, Alex? Can we live a life free from all the pressure, from the expectations that have been placed on us? I want to build a life with you, but I can't lose myself in the process. The next day, Alex made the most important decision of his life. He called his father, and this time there was no hesitation in his voice. Dad, I'm done. I'm done trying to live up to expectations that aren't mine. I'm done living for you. I'm going to build a life with Isabella. And if that means losing everything, if that means losing the family business, then so be it. I've made my choice. His father was silent on the other end of the line, but Alex could feel the weight of his words. For the first time, he wasn't afraid. He had chosen a different path, one that was his own, and with that, Alex walked away from the family business, choosing Isabella and the life they could build together. The road ahead would be difficult, and there would be sacrifices. But he was ready for it. He had made his choice. The weeks after Alex's decision were filled with uncertainty, but also with newfound hope. He and Isabella began to rebuild their lives from the ground up, free from the expectations that had once dictated their every move. They found a small apartment in the city, one that was theirs and theirs alone. The world they had known rich, with luxury, power, and status, was no longer a part of their lives. But as they sat together, hand in hand, Alex realized that he had never been more content. They both faced challenges in their new life, but they faced them together. Isabella's art career took off, and Alex started a new venture, one that aligned with his values and passions. He no longer had to live in the shadow of his family's legacy. He could be his own person, and that meant everything. 1 year later, Alex and Isabella stood on a rooftop overlooking the city, the skyline stretching out before them. It was a quiet evening, the sun setting behind the tall buildings. They had come so far since the day they had made their decision to be together. Alex took Isabella's hand in his and looked into her eyes. You know, I never thought we'd be here. I never thought I'd have everything I wanted: love, freedom, happiness. But now, I can't imagine life without you. Isabella smiled, her heart full. We've come a long way, haven't we? From the pressure, from the expectations. We've built something real, something ours. Alex pulled her into his arms, holding her tightly. I don't know what the future holds, but I know that I'm ready for it. As long as it's with you. Isabella looked up at him, her heart overflowing with love. And I'm ready to. No more fear, no more regrets. Just us. They stood there, wrapped in each other's arms, knowing that no matter what challenges lay ahead, they would face them together. Because this time, they were choosing each other, and that was all that mattered.